year was 1870. The United States was only a few years off the heels of the Civil War and the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. General Ulysses S. Grant was President of the United States. The United States Department of Justice was established. The Chicago Baseball Club, the team that ultimately became the Chicago Cubs, played its first game. The mode of transportation was horse-drawn buggies and wagons. The location was New York City. Construction of the Brooklyn Bridge was underway. The first of New York's 4 elevated railroads opened. Thomas Nast, the star political cartoonist of Harper's Weekly, began a campaign that led to the downfall of the corrupt political machine that ran the city. The Statue of Liberty and the now famous towering New York skyline did not yet exist. Several thousand of the nearly 1 million residents of the Manhattan area belonged to the Masonic fraternity, the oldest, largest, and most widely known fraternity in the world. The Knickerbocker Cottage, a quaint 3-story white building with black shutters and ornate lampposts, was a restaurant located at 426 6th Avenue. The restaurant was a popular lunch spot for many Masons who worked and lived nearby. At that time, a short-lived 13 craze swept the United States. Instead of avoiding the unlucky number 13, many embraced the number as a form of rebellion, flaunting their denial of superstition. At Knickerbocker Cottage, a special lunch table on the 2nd floor was set daily for 13 Masons. The men who dined there, all known for their good humor and wit, sat down precisely at 12:13 every afternoon. It was at that table, among this jovial group led by Dr. Walter Fleming and actor William "Billy" Florence, where the idea for Shriners International was born.
Oh, it's nice of you to be able to join us on such late notice, Billy. We can now start to dine with more than just 12. As we all know, that's an unlucky number. Look at this. It's 12:13 exactly. We can officially begin lunch. But before we begin, brothers, let's raise a glass. To Freemasonry.
To Freemasonry.
To brotherhood.
To brotherhood.
To fun.
To fun.
To mirth.
To mirth.
And cheers to our good man Fowler for having such a fine establishment.
Fowler.
For us merry band of Masons to gather.
To Fowler.
Although I do love all my brother Masons, it does seem that only those with the most wit and cheer take their lunch at the Knickerbocker.
Well, you don't get to have your photo on these esteemed walls of the Knickerbocker for being a bore.
Would it not be wonderful if there were an order that had all the ritual and structures of Masonry that we respect, but also had the humor and lightheartedness that we enjoy in our lunches?
Indeed. Yeah.
Men of virtue and esteem that also enjoy having a good time and a laugh.
Yes.
If there was ever a man to start such an order, it would be you, Dr. Fleming.
Brother.
And of course, your trusty man, Billy, who plays pretend for a living.
I am most passionate about theatrics, both on and off the stage. While traveling abroad in France last year, I attended a magnificent Arabian Nights party. It was a sight to see all the guests dressed in Arabian garb. The decor was such that you could believe that you were in a mosque in the middle of the desert. I thought if I stepped outside, a camel might walk by.
That sounds great, Billy. Honestly, wonderful, but slightly off topic.
It really isn't. What if we created an order as Dr. Fleming had proposed, but with an Arabian theme? With titles and clothing and ritual modeled after those of the far-off lands of the Near East. It would have the splendor and structure of masonry, but would have pomp and flair, and most importantly, fun.
There we go.
Here, here. I think you're onto something, Billy. As someone who studies and speaks Arabic, I would be pleased to help with the cultural and language references.
Very good. If everyone at this table has interest in such an order, I think we need to pursue it further.
Yes. I agree. You bet.
Very well then. Let us set a lunch date to discuss this further. I think there is great promise in establishing an ancient Arabic order for men of integrity who do not shy away from humor
Indeed.
and hijinks.
Yes.
Agreed?
Agreed.
After that historic luncheon in 1870, Dr. Fleming completed the first complete ritual of the ancient Arabic order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, a book of ceremonies for various functions, including initiation, installation of officers, and opening and closing business meetings. The group of 13 Masons continued to meet regularly at the Knickerbocker Cottage to discuss the new organization. But it was a meeting held on September 26, 1872, that is considered to be the founding date of the fraternity. During this meeting at the old Masonic Hall on 13th Street in New York City, Mecca Shriners was established as the organization's first temple. In following the Near Eastern theme, the founding members decided to call fraternity chapters temples. The 8 members present on that day were elected officers of Mecca Shriners, with Fleming named to the highest position, the Grand Potentate. In the first years of the fraternity's founding, membership growth and meeting activity moved at a sluggish pace. In 1876, there were only 43 members, called nobles, and all but 6 of them lived in New York City. Then, at a membership meeting on June 6, 1876, which also became known as the First Imperial Session, the fraternity made great strides toward shaping what would eventually become an organization with hundreds of thousands of members throughout the world. During this meeting at the Masonic Lodge in New York City, the 20 members in attendance established the governing body of the fraternity, originally called the Imperial Grand Council. 14 nobles of Mecca Shriners were elected to serve 3-year terms on the Imperial Grand Council, with Dr. Fleming presiding as the Grand Potentate. The officers also established rules for membership and for forming new temples. Leadership also charted a second temple, Damascus Shriners, in Rochester, New York. The organization, however, was still in need of more members. So Dr. Fleming, Florence, and other founding members embarked on a publicity and recruiting campaign.
Welcome, nobles. We are gathered here today on this Albany, New York, on the 6th day of February in the year 1877 for the second annual session of the Grand and Ancient Arabic Order, Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. I am Dr. Walter M. Fleming, your Grand Potentate, and I am honored to be here along with your Imperial Grand Council, as well as members of Mecca, Damascus, Naja, and Cyprus temples. Throughout the year, I, along with Noble Florence and other members of your Imperial Grand Council, have traveled many a mile and met with many great men to promote the promulgation of our esteemed order. I think we have every reason to be highly gratified and encouraged by our efforts up to this present time. All who have received the order are evidently exceedingly well pleased with the impressiveness of our ritualistic work, as well as the sublime tenets of the order. It could no doubt be made the most powerful order, dedicated to the welfare of Masonry in this country. I also desire to thank the officers and membership in general who have aided in the success of the order by their efforts. And I feel confident that it will result in the most sanguine expectations and beyond. And we may now rest assured that it is destined to be the most popular and successful of orders. And when it comes in the way of any of our co-workers to commend the cause to any desirable brother, either personally or in correspondence, it will add greatly to the success of the subordinate temples, as well as to the prosperity of the institution. And so, wishing you all success, and with earnest Godspeed, I am fraternally yours to command.
The membership recruitment campaign following the second annual session in 1877 was a major success. By 1878, there were 425 Shriners and 13 temples, including those in New York, Ohio, Vermont, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Iowa. 10 years later, there were more than 7,200 Shriners and 48 temples, including Ramesses in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, the first temple outside the United States. While Shriners International was established to give Masons the opportunity to focus on fun and fellowship, charity quickly became a significant cornerstone of the fraternity. From their earliest years, Shriners provided relief by means of volunteers and funds for victims of epidemics, floods, fires, and hurricanes. Temples raised money that they donated to underprivileged families, orphanages, Masonic homes, and children's hospitals. In 1919, W. Freeland Kendrick, then Imperial Potentate and member of Lulu Shriners, visited a facility in Philadelphia that offered residential medical care for the poor. This visit inspired Kendrick to plant the seed for an official philanthropy for the fraternity. Kendrick traveled more than 150,000 miles, visiting a majority of the 146 temples throughout North America to campaign for an official philanthropy. During his travels, he was also introduced to the Scottish Rite Hospital in Atlanta, which provided medical care to children with orthopedic problems whose families were not able to pay for care. At the 46th Imperial Session in Portland, Oregon, Kendrick recommended the formation of the Shriners' Home for friendless, orphaned, and crippled children. The report, given on June 23, 1920, was not well received by those in the meeting. That afternoon, Kendrick took the floor again and proposed building a hospital for children with disabilities and recommended that the funding come from an annual $2 per capita tax to fraternity members, and that it would be called Shriners Hospital for Crippled Children. Many Shriners expressed doubts about the practicality and the responsibility that comes with starting and running a children's hospital. The prospects of the plan were fading when a noble stood up to address the crowd.
Noble, please state your name and temple.
Forest Adair, Urab Temple, Atlanta, Georgia. Imperial Potentate, I rise, unlike those before me, without reluctance, but with enthusiasm. I was lying in bed yesterday morning about 4 o'clock, and some poor fellow who had wandered from the rest of the band stood down there under my window for 25 minutes playing "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles." Did you catch it? After a while, I dropped back into a peaceful sleep, and I dreamed. I dreamed of a children's hospital run by the Scottish Rite and visited by a number of members of the Imperial Council. And I thought of that wandering performer of the morning, and I wondered if there was not a great significance in the tune he was playing for the Shriners. "I'm forever blowing bubbles." We meet from year to year. We talk about our great order. We read the report of the hundreds of thousands of dollars we have accumulated and loaned to the banks and pay for our mileage and our per diem. This resolution recognizes the fact that we accept that the responsibility is ours. And while we have paid money for songs and paid money for bands, there is not a thing you can put your finger on that I know of that has been done for humanity that can be credited to the Shrine as an organization. I want to see this thing started. For God's sake, let us lay aside the soap and water and stop blowing bubbles and get down to brass tacks. Let's blow all the dust aside. Let's get rid of all the technical objections. And if there is a Shriner in North America, after he sees your first child has been treated, who objects to having paid the $2, I will give him a check back for it myself.